Imagine this for a moment. You're sitting in a room, preparing to give a talk. You've been told a few things before, perhaps even by yourself. I just can't do this. I can't speak in front of people. But then the question arises, how do you know this is valid? Now to hear that, there's something inside you that shifts, because suddenly the belief you held is questioned. Wait a minute, you might say. What do you mean? How do I know? You pause, then you think about it a little more. Well, I've given a couple of talks before, you admit, and they didn't go the way I wanted them to. And right there, right in that moment, the focus shifts. Do you notice how it shifted? Because now, it's not about whether you can or can't do it, but about what happened in those past talks. The problem isn't your ability, it's the quality of those past experiences. So what do we do here? A completely different world. We're not talking about whether you can or can't do it. You're talking about improving the quality of the talks you've given. It's all about quality, and now, what do you do to enhance it? Just like that, the problem isn't as big anymore. It's no longer a black and white yes or no thing. It's a question of refinement. You see, when you start looking for examples, even small ones, where things might have gone a little better, you unlock a whole new perspective. For example, let's think about a situation where someone says, nobody likes me, nobody talks to me. Now that's a statement that feels universal, doesn't it? But what happens when you challenge that statement? What happens when you break down that universality? You ask, really, nobody talks to you? And then you start looking for exceptions. Well, I talk to you, you might say, and I like you. Notice how the person might respond with something like, you don't count, because deep down, that was a self-imposed limitation. Now here's where it gets interesting. You take that nobody talks to me statement and divide it. Instead of focusing on nobody, you narrow it down. Who specifically do you feel doesn't talk to you? And just like that, you have a new entry point to the problem. Maybe it's a certain girl in school. Now you've gotten to a whole different landscape. Instead of a sweeping generalization, the issue becomes more specific, more manageable. But then you ask the key question, do you talk to her? And just with that simple question, something clicks. The person starts to realize the very thing they believed about the other person might actually be true about them. Maybe she thinks I don't like her because I don't talk to her, they might think. That's it, no long process, no digging into deeper beliefs. Just a few well-chosen questions, a small shift in perspective, and suddenly the problem is seen in an entirely new way. Now let's consider how this applies more broadly. In a conversation, when you can break down generalizations like this, when you can create counterexamples with just a few questions, you start to dissolve problems before they even really have a chance to take hold. And remember, it isn't about forcing someone to change. It's not about trying to fix them. It's about simply helping them to see the world. It isn't as rigid or as fixed as they might have believed. And when that happens, everything changes. When you begin with an understanding of the filters the people are bringing with them, their hopes, concerns, beliefs, you set the stage for a deeper, smoother conversation. You meet them where they're at. You take into account all of these things that might otherwise get in the way of the clear, effective communication. But here's the trick. Instead of trying to fix their problem, you simply help them to explore the edges of their belief. You let them see their conclusions. They're not as set in stone as they once thought. So what if I told you? You could use these patterns in your own life. Whenever you face a problem, whenever you feel like something is stuck or difficult, all it takes is a subtle shift, a small question, and an openness to see things differently. In fact, what you might discover is, many of the problems that you face, they're simply the result of the way you frame them. When you break the framing down and look at things from a different angle, you might just realize the problem. It's much easier to solve than you thought. And sometimes with just a few simple shifts, things start to look different. You can see things in ways you never imagined. The world opens up. The obstacles you thought were there simply just vanish.